Ben Strauss from the Washington Post, their sports media reporter, set to join us on the impact of all these leagues, including the NCAA tournament, which indirectly was going to start tomorrow night with the first 4 games that no one cares about, and they probably should never have scheduled anyway. However, they were going to start tomorrow night, and then on Thursday, the madness would have begun. And the madness, by the way, is worth billions of dollars. I know there's a lot of people out there that think this is made up and that it might be a political thing. I got news for you. The NCAA tournament doesn't want to cancel. Nor does the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NHL. So the impact. Ben Strauss, Washington Post, here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Ben, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And, it's odd circumstances. I'm a big fan of March Madness. I go on vacation. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow. I go every year to watch the tournament. I take off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That is not happening. Now, it affects me because I will not go on vacation. But how will this affect CBS, Turner, and those brands?
Well, I mean, you think about it. They pay a pretty big price tag. They're in the middle of a 14-year, $11 billion deal, and they've already signed an extension that kicks in a couple of years. Another 8 years for another $8.8 billion. So it's through 2032, and it's close to $20 billion that these networks are paying. And now they don't have the games, right? And so how do they make their money back on these games, right? It's through the cable fees that you pay for Turner and the retransmission fees you pay to watch CBS. But it's also the advertising, right? And so last year, talking about $910 million spent on the NCAA tournament. And not only is that not moved, where you sort of like move around the inventory and maybe you're playing in the summer where there's fewer people watching, but you're sort of negotiating rates and stuff. I mean, it's just canceled. And so, that's a lot of money to make up to advertisers. And a lot of new spots, like when sports comes back, you're going to have to find spots, for them to advertise that they've already paid for. And that means you can't sell that inventory, because it's promised. So, I mean, it's a lot of money here.
Yeah, Ben, and I got into an argument with somebody about this who thinks obviously a lot of people think this is a political thing and that this is a political season. And I'm like, well, the NCAA tournament doesn't want to cancel. And his response was, well, they have cancellation insurance. And I'm thinking to myself, could that really cover the losses of what is going on here? Like, hey, I got cancellation insurance, so therefore the numbers that you just spit out at us, like, that doesn't seem like there's a covering of, you know what, we're just going to cancel the tournament because we have insurance on it.
Yeah, I mean, I there is some insurance, right? And the CEO of Comcast, right, Jones NBC, talked about an insurance policy that they have, in case the Olympics gets canceled. But sort of the details of that are pretty hairy, right? Like, who's protected, right? The network is protected. Is the NCAA protected by their own insurance policies? And like, what happens if you have competing insurance policies? And also sort of, right, is this virus, a natural disaster or like a terrorist attack? Does it rise to that level where, some of these like serious clauses can be invoked? And if, one side wants to invoke one of these clauses, I think you're probably going to end up in like litigation, for, serious amounts of money. So there are ways that they'll try to work this out, but this is there's a reason the NCAA waited until like Friday morning to cancel the tournament, like 2 days after.
Ben, here locally, they were playing games in Atlantic City. They were the last one. The Metro was the last tournament to finally
right.
say like, all right, but it was like teams or leagues or college basketball in general seemed like it was holding out as long as possible until the walls, just started caving in on them. I mean, they close the casinos here at 8:00 tonight. You can't go gamble here in Atlantic City. So, it's gotten to a point where, the NCAA, was like, all right, I guess we got to do it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, this is like a last resort. Like, they did not want to do this, and it's going to big headache to sort of unravel all the pieces and all the money that's been promised and all the money that, should have been paid. And now they're going to have to figure out, how to make everybody, nobody's going to be whole, but, you sort of do your best to figure out ways, to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, as best you can.
Yeah. Ben Strauss, Washington Post, covers sports media. I want to ask you, I don't know how familiar you might be with the regional sports networks, but, here in Philly, NBC, Philadelphia, there's one in Washington, the Mid-Atlantic, and they're all over the place. I got to imagine that this is going to cripple those. I mean, I turned on this morning to look Sports Rise. I watch every minute, every morning, 15 minutes. They have this, they run it on replay, but it's every 15 minutes. That was not on. No Sixers, no Flyers, no Phillies, no Caps, no, it's amazing what are these these regional sports networks that NBC runs or Fox Sports run? Do you think they're in some big time trouble?
Yeah, I think probably in more trouble than like a CBS or a Turner, right? Because of March Madness. Like March Madness, they've got 14 years. They've got till 2032. There's ways they can piece it together. They could just add another year on the end of the deal. The NCAA tournament could just say, we need to add some more games and some teams in future years to make up that value of the $1 billion that we lost this year. And it's also just one tournament. Like, what's going to happen in these regional sports networks is way more crippling. I think that's the word you use, because this is like every night, the bulk of their programming that's going away, not just, a tournament that they did to more highlights and more notoriety because it's national. But I think that the RSNs, there's actually going to be way more issues around them than some of the national networks.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about them. And then, of course, beat writers. I know you had just written a story recently about sports writing and The Athletic and that whole story behind The Athletic, which, by the way, if you get a chance to check it out there, follow Ben at Ben Strauss on Twitter. And you can find that Ben J. Strauss, sorry. And, people who are beat writers, I mean, what is the thought that's going through those people's minds right now?
Yeah, I think, right, you sort of like in sort of this age of the internet, there's so much content around, newspapers are struggling. And sort of there were these real existential questions about sports writers and beat writers, and sort of like, what is their role in, the media ecosystem of sports today? And are there enough people that want to pay for, high quality, professional journalism? And this is only going to sort of make those questions more acute, I think, because there's going to be fewer people reading sports, right? With The Athletic, people are paying for these subscriptions because they want to follow their favorite teams, Flyers, Eagles, Phillies. And if you're like on a monthly subscription, right, and all of a sudden there's no sports, are you going to pay for that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, right? Like it makes sense to, I don't need it this month. I don't need it next month. And, that for like a small startup, like I think if enough people make that decision, that like affects the cash flow. And yeah, I think it's, I hope it's not, a terrible thing, but you have to wonder sort of, at least.
Yeah, especially with such an unknown around that whole model. Like, how is it being supported? It seems like there's a lot of people working there. There's a lot of people making good money, and no one really knows the subscriptions and the amount of money they bring in. It's just that specific entity I fear for a little bit. The regional sports networks a little bit I'm concerned about. Ben Strauss from the Washington Post. What about if football, like they have kind of escaped this whole thing, and they're doing everything still. The league year's starting. They're going to do the draft. But how would it affect if football was in season right now, those networks and those contracts?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, even before we get to the season, right, the NFL just finished up the CBA. They got it passed by the players and the owners. And this was supposed to be sort of like a big monumental moment because the NFL is king, and they were going to go to the TV partners with, the number one product in America. The PGA Tour just signed a new deal a couple of weeks ago, and they bumped their rights fees 60 to 70%. And if the PGA Tour can bump, 60 to 70%, there's people that think the NFL was going to bump 100%. I think they get about $7 billion right now. And this next deal, which would kick in 2021, 2022, they could get $15 billion. And so now we've got a pandemic, you've got a stock market tanking, and you've got networks that are trying to figure out, how am I going to navigate this, right? With no NBA, no baseball, no hockey. I wonder if their financial positions change a little bit, and I wonder how much that impacts sort of like what giant deals the NFL, would have been able to sign. That would be the big story right now, is sort of the NFL shopping around and who's going to throw the most money at it. And now you may imagine that they're on hold a little bit, but also sort of what's the long-term impact of the financial outlooks for these networks that we're going to spend all these billions of dollars.
Yeah, Ben, and I'll kind of leave you with this, and I don't know that you have an answer, and maybe you just have a thought or a hypothesis, but if these leagues just run out of time and they can't pick back up, what kind of is it devastation if the NBA can't finish the season, if hockey can't finish the season, if baseball can't even get started? I mean, what is the ramifications of losing the rest of where we are, for these leagues, or possibly not even starting if you're baseball?
Yeah, I think in the short term it's pretty bad. I think the leagues will figure it out. The other way, somebody explained it to me, not talking about the RSNs necessarily, but sort of the big deals. The leagues need the networks. The networks need the cable distributors. The cable distributors need, the leagues for the content, and they need the networks to deliver the content. And so the partners who have to work this stuff out do need each other, especially like on the bigger stuff. You've seen RSNs get into fights with Comcast, and that's a little bit more acrimonious, but at least at the national level, there's a lot of incentive to sort of figure this out and to not drag it out in court, and to not, have it be super, super messy. So I think at the national level, there'll be ways to figure it out. I do wonder sort of at the RSN level, how difficult that's going to be.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that, and obviously see where those leagues go from here as everything is kind of shut down. Baseball has just put out a statement as well. They are probably going to be out possibly till past Memorial Day now. Ben Strauss covers sports media for the Washington Post. Check out his stuff, and really interesting. This March Madness, as you wrote, worth billions of dollars for the NCAA. Think about a tournament 3 weeks long, billions of dollars that is now being lost, and we'll see how they all recover. Ben, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, enjoy. I hope you find stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I'll be all right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN.